Hello and welcome to the Tuesday, February 11th, 2025 edition of the SANS Internet Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich and today I'm recording from Jacksonville, Florida. Today we got a diary by Didier with more details regarding that famous mark of the web issue. As I indicated, there have been ongoing issues with the mark of the web not properly propagating if you're decompressing files or other sort of multi-file compound formats like, for example, disk images. Didier is talking here specifically about 7zip. 7zip on Windows has a specific setting that's actually disabled by default to set the mark of the web for all extracted files if the archive overall had this mark set. And again, this is an issue that has to be taken care of on unpacking, on decompression, not on compression. Kind of nice if an attacker assembles an archive with the mark of web being set for all the components. But again, the archive was created by the attacker, so it's really up to the defender as they are unpacking these archives to properly set the mark of the web on all files being extracted, so users will get the proper warning as they are then attempting to open any of the files. And then we got an update from Apple for iOS and iPadOS. This particular update fixes one single vulnerability, which already indicates it's an important vulnerability. It's one that's already being exploited in the wild. Apparently, this vulnerability allows attackers to bypass USB restricted mode. What that refers to is that iOS devices and iPadOS devices, of course, as well, will restrict data connections via USB to devices that are specifically prior authorized, that you have connected to in the past. And also, this restriction will automatically enable when the device is locked and if a certain time of inactivity expired. So this can be bypassed, which means that an attacker would be able to do something like an evil maid attack or such by connecting a malicious device to the iPhone, iPad, and then cause code execution, data leakage, and such. So that's the vulnerability being addressed here. It's already actively being exploited again, which means if this is your threat model, that you're afraid of someone actually connecting to your device while you're not close to it or such, then you definitely should apply this update quickly. And Google's security team released an interesting proof of concept exploit for some AMD CPUs. The problem here is that an attacker who has root on a system is actually able to update the microcode that's running on a particular CPU. Now, this microcode is often updated during boot, but should be static once the system is up and running. And of course, there should be controls around what microcode can be uploaded to a CPU. The interesting proof of concept they came up with was actually a modification to the random number generator that would always create the identical value. Be happy if an attacker is doing just that, because at least that's easy to detect. But this is sort of one of those fundamental supply chain issues. I've spoken about random number generators years ago, I think 5 or 10 years ago at RSA once, as if it's one of the top threats at the time. The problem is it's very difficult to verify that a random number generator is properly functioning. And for example, in modifying the code that's being used to create random numbers, an attacker could break a large number of cryptographic protocols. And CISA released an advisory that they're also seeing active exploitation of a vulnerability in Trimble Cityworks. This is geographic information system software often used in local governments and such. So definitely something that you need to keep an eye on if you happen to use this software package. Luckily, I don't believe it's used very widely, just sort of in these fairly specific but critical areas. Then we got an interesting update from Securi about what MageCart is up to. MageCart attacks are typically referred to as attacks that modify JavaScript, often on a supplier's website, in order to then inject keystroke loggers into unsuspecting websites. This new variety of the attack that Securi is writing about here looks a little bit different. They're taking advantage of JavaScript being used by Google Analytics. Now, they did not compromise Google Analytics. Instead, if a website uses Google Analytics, they're just modifying the JavaScript on the page to include the malicious payload. The problem here is that, of course, administrators often just copy-paste the JavaScript for Google Analytics. They're not really paying close attention to what the JavaScript exactly does or looks like. And as a result, these changes get then undetected. There's also an interesting domain name they're using, and let me just look it up here. It was something like eurowebmonitortool.com. The reason I think they're using this particular host name or domain name, eurowebmonitortool.com, is back when I used Google Analytics, one of the problems was that Google Analytics itself is then pulling in all kinds of other JavaScript. And some of that JavaScript is used to display the cookie warnings for European users. And maybe they're sort of trying to fit in here with this pattern. Hey, just some new random JavaScript being loaded to include that cookie warning. Even an administrator who pays a little bit of attention may be sort of used to this behavior from Google Analytics, and as a result, not follow up. Interesting new development here. Definitely take a look for any modification to the Google Analytics code that you may be including in your site. Well, and this is it for today. So thanks again for listening. Thanks for everybody who is leaving recommendations in your favorite podcast app, is rating this podcast, or just recommending it to their friends and enemies. Thanks, and talk to you again tomorrow. Bye.